All rise, veuillez vous lever. The International Criminal Court is now in session. L'audience de la Cour pénale internationale est ouverte. Please be seated, veuillez vous asseoir.
Yes, good morning all. Can we call the case, please?
Good morning, Madam President, Your Honors. This is the situation in Darfur, Sudan, in the case of the prosecutor versus Ali Muhammad Ali Abd-Al-Rahman. Case reference ICC 02050120. For the record, we are in open session.
Yes, could we have the appearances from the defense, please?
Good morning, Madam President. Good morning, Your Honors. Good morning, colleagues. Together with Mr. Abd-Al-Rahman, present in this courtroom today, our intern, Madam Valeria Olob, our visiting professional, Mr. Wilson Yu Acho, legal assistant Ahmad Issa, assistant to counsel Audrey Matteo, and Ian Edwards, and myself, Cyril Lauchi, counsel.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Lache. Prosecution, please.
Good morning, Madam President, Your Honors, everybody in the courtroom. Myself, Julia Nichols, with Edward Jeremy, Allison Whitford, Laura Morris, Rachel Mazzarella, Claire Sabatini, and Diana Saba. Thank you.
Yes, and the representatives of the victims, please.
Good morning, Madam President, Your Honors. The participating victims this morning are represented by Melissa Beaulieu-Lucier, my case manager Saif Kassis, our intern Ahmed Al-Aman, and myself, Nathalie von Westinghausen. Thank you.
Yes, just forgive me a moment, would you? Yes. Right. Well, Mr. Lache, I think it's for you to begin.
I did not expect so, but I can.
Who did you expect was going first?
The usual way, the usual order, but no problem.
Well, it's normally the defense mitigation.
Okay.
And then, well, I mean, okay.
I'm happy to go. I expected to, but it...
Yeah, all right. That's why I had the defense first. This is the defendant's the accused sentence. So I rather thought. Actually, I suppose no. I suppose that must be right. Yeah. All right. Off you go, Mr.
My time will come, Madam President.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Latch, yeah.
Thank you, Your Honor. Hope to be about an hour, as we said. Talk first a little bit about the person before us today, Mr. Abd-Al-Rahman, proven at trial to be the criminal known as Ali Kushayb. He's found guilty by Your Honors of multiple serious war crimes and crimes against humanity on a massive scale over a large geographical period and a lengthy period of time. These crimes resulting in terrible and, in fact, lasting harm to the survivors, to thousands of especially vulnerable victims. Sentencing in this case should not be complicated. You found him guilty beyond reasonable doubt for 27 counts of war crimes and crimes against humanity, all of the criminal conduct for which he was charged. All of the crimes the accused was found guilty of were especially grave. They were committed against multiple victims, particularly vulnerable victims of all ages, including, of course, children, boys and girls, detainees, and civilians fleeing attacks. The torture, the murders, the rapes, the other crimes were carried out with really unimaginable cruelty and for discriminatory motives. Murder of at least 213 persons, at least 46 in Khartoum and Bendisi, at least 53 in Mukshar, at least 114 in Dalej. He personally murdered at least 2 victims in Dalej, Yanif and Sheikh Motor, with his axe. You literally have an axe murderer before you. This is the stuff of nightmares. Rape in a public and exceptionally cruel and brutal manner. Rape is always cruel and brutal, but in this case, it's really off the charts. At least 16 women of all ages, elderly women and children, girls, accompanied by horrific outrages upon their personal dignity during these rapes. Torture of at least 200 victims, 100 in Mukjar, 100 in Dalej, including, as you found, his personal, direct participation in the brutal torture of P986, who suffers from that violence to this day. P986 had to have a screen installed in the courtroom to spare him the trauma of seeing his torturer in the same room with him. Forcible transfer of the civilian population to Khartoum and Bendisi, at least those who survived the attack. These civilians, their families, forced to flee their homes because of the attack, his attack, the destruction, burning, pillaging, looting of their homes and their property. These vulnerable people, already poor in 2003, already poor, they lost everything. Many of them can't return home to this day. They're living in refugee camps. It's been over 2 decades. The harm continues. And he has shown zero remorse for these crimes. The core of the whole defense, you called it the core in the judgment at one point. The core of the whole defense was a lie. He is Ali Kushayb. I'll talk a little bit about those crimes in the context of the 3 operations later. But the evidence overwhelmingly shows in our submission that the only just, the only appropriate sentence is a joint sentence of life in prison. Throughout these operations and the exceptionally grave crimes, he acted with persecutory intent against the non-Arab tribes, and in this case, is predominantly 4 victims. You see that in paras 933, 936, 935, and 936. And Your Honors, I may not read out every paragraph number, but I can provide you and my colleagues with the notes, which have each paragraph, if you wish, afterwards. The Chamber found, you found, for just one example of his persecutory intent, after the attack on the civilians in North Bendisi, in fact, during the middle of the attacks, in the middle of the murders, the rapes, the torture, the pillage, the destruction, the forcible transfer, the accused celebrated with his agids, stating they had taught the enemy a lesson that the enemy will never forget. The Four will never forget this lesson. The Four people were his enemy. He was an enthusiastic, energetic, effective perpetrator. He committed these crimes knowingly, willfully, and with, the evidence shows, enthusiasm and vigor. During the Khartoum and Bendisi operation, he instructed the thousands of Janjaweed forces under his command, this is at 396 and 1004 of the judgment, to kill without any limit, to wipe out and sweep away. In Mukjar, he was heard shouting, and this is when the men were being taken from the police station to be murdered in execution squads. He was heard shouting, Allah Akbar, Tora Bora is over, prepare their graves, as they left to be taken away, to be shot by his men. Let's talk about his powerful position of authority. You recognized his high-level position and authority in paragraph 56 of the trial judgment. I won't read it all out, but there's a good summary there. And he was found to have committed these crimes from this position of high authority over thousands of Janjaweed, and sometimes GOS personnel as well, who he instructed to carry out the mass killings of civilian prisoners. You see that at paras 544, 554, and 668. I'll read one line from 554. The accused then ordered the detainees to lie down in a line. After that, he instructed the Janjaweed and GOS forces to shoot and kill the detainees. He was head of the Mujahideen Committee. You found that at paragraphs 667 and 668, and worked closely with the GOS forces in that position. And again, of course, you found that he had de facto control over the Janjaweed he commanded during the relevant period. That's at para 679. And he chose to commit these crimes. From this position of authority, he chose to join in the fight against the rebels and to commit the crimes he was convicted of. He wasn't kidnapped as a child, forced to become a fighter. He was not press-ganged into a combat unit. His tribe, we heard the Taisha were told by the Nazir, you don't need to take part in this campaign. He was a literate, middle-aged, retired military man with his own business in Garcilla, and he knew better. He knew he could be charged for the crimes he was committing. You found that at paras 52 to 55. His decision in 2003, murder, rape, torture, pillage, attacks on the poor, forcible transfer, count me in. He perpetrated these crimes pursuant to a criminal state policy from the highest level of the GOS. That's at 823 to 832. You found President Bashir and the top level of the GOS were responsible for the issuance of the 18 December 2003 National Security Council Plan, which contained the criminal objective, bluntly, expressly contained the criminal objective to attack civilians, target non-Arab tribes, and execute community leaders. And the accused bragged that he only took instructions from ministers Hussein and Haroun and said he had direct access to them. That's at 662 and 983. So yes, he's not at the top level of the GOS. Yes, he's a subordinate, but he was eager, energetic, and brutally effective in his role in implementing this criminal plan in Mukjar and Wadi Saleh with the thousands under his command. He's the one to set fire, to actually place the flame to the house, to the hut in Kadum and Bindisi. He's the one to order and oversee torture and murder, sometimes directly himself. He's the one to shout, Amsa Aksa, urge thousands of Janjaweed troops to, quote, cut the straw and eat it raw. Don't leave anyone alive. Bring me no one alive. Never bring someone alive. And that was understood for what it was, orders to rape and murder, para 826. In short, basically, he's the vicious, lethal point of the GOS's spear, directed at the four people. As I said briefly in the beginning, the long-term harm and suffering for the victims continues to this day for the survivors. He, however, chose to remain a fugitive for 13 years, enjoying a privileged position, living comfortably at home with his family in his hometown, Rahat al-Burdi. The surviving victims who suffered the aftermath and continue to suffer, many cannot return home to this day. They're living under the harsh conditions that the legal representative for victims has emphasized in this trial, in refugee camps. After losing everything at his hands, they're unable to return to their land. And you only need to look at the examples of the expressions of the victims contained in the legal representative's sentencing observations to see what that impact is. Now, Your Honors, in the trial judgment, unfortunately, you noted no less than 7 times that the defense misrepresented, misled, mischaracterized, or attempted to mislead the trial chamber, and noted that the appeals chamber had found the defense had misrepresented the testimonies of witnesses. That's paras 107, 114, 116, 117, 129, 140, and footnote 782. Unfortunately, that continues to an extent. In paragraph 27 of their submissions for this hearing, the defense astonishingly state, I won't read it all out.
Just pause, would you, Mr. Nichols? If you're going to refer to paragraphs of the sentencing submissions, and we want to turn them up. So can you wait for a minute while
Oh,
we
yes,
take that?
sorry, Your Honor.
Sorry, what did you say? Paragraph 27?
Of the defense's submissions, Your
Yeah.
Honor.
Yes, thank you.
I won't read out the whole paragraph, but in part, Your Honors wrote, the chamber finds, the defense wrote, the chamber finds that he, their client, was at best one of several local leaders of the so-called Janjaweed militia. And they continue, Mr. Abd-Al-Rahman is rarely found to have acted on his own, and when he is found to have done so, it is with little or no authority over others, and then in the course of implementing orders he received, if it's him. That's simply not true. Look, just for example, at para 469 of your judgment, where you wrote, in late February 2004, a contingent of approximately 6,000 members of the Janjaweed gathered around Mukhtar. The accused was the leader of those Janjaweed, and they took their orders and instructions from him. And you can also look to these paragraphs of the judgment to see how incorrect that assertion is. 539, 552, 554, 557, 983, 985, 1002, 1003. And as I said, you also found that the accused gave orders to GOS personnel, paras 544, 554, 668. Another example, in paragraph 680 of the judgment, Your Honors note in finding, this was talking about the accused as an influential figure in the area before the conflict, that he mediated in tribal negotiations. Seizing on this sentence, and citing to paragraph 680 of the judgment, the defense refers, and I'll have to find, the paragraph in the dissent submissions. The defense refers to the chamber's acknowledgement of Mr. Abd-Al-Rahman's role as a man of peace and as a mediator. I'll have to find that, their paragraph number, Your Honors, sorry. But if you acknowledged that the man known as Ali Kushayb was a man of peace, I must have missed that. You never found that he was a man of peace, although they write that you acknowledge that, which is misleading to the public. Your Honors, could we go into private session? I'm sorry for 1 second.
Yes, private session, please.
We're back in open session, Madam President.
Now, Your Honors, regarding the accused's background and his role in the Army before he retired, I'd urge you to read the defense's opening statement, T-129 ET, 20th of October, 23, at page 31, lines 10 to page 32, line 5. I won't read it all out, but essentially what my friends argue there is that their client couldn't be Ali Kushayb. He couldn't be in a commander of the Janjaweed in 2003 and 4 because he had no combat experience in the Army, and they say expressly he wasn't a leader of fighting men in the Army. They make that same point in their final trial brief, not the submissions, but the final trial brief, at paragraph 3, right at the beginning. In that paragraph, my friends write that their client joined the Sudanese Armed Forces, SAF, in 1964 at the age of 15 and remained in the SAF until his retirement in the early 90s. Within the SAF, he worked in the medical unit as a medical assistant nurse. The highest rank he ever attained was that of Musaid, a non-commissioned officer rank. He has never been deployed on a combat operation, and he has never held a command position. That's paragraph 3 of the final brief. However, if you look at the more recent statement that he has made, or more recent information, in paragraph 27, he spoke at length about his leadership role in his unit and how he proudly did not follow orders from higher-ranking officers to retreat, describing them as cowards. He took command of his unit. This is while he's in the Army, before he retires. He took command of his unit. Paragraph 28. He led a mission with a few select men fighting rebels and confiscating many cattle. He then led a breakout from a siege by a much larger rebel unit. He decided to attack, despite officers telling him it was too risky. Paragraph 29. He appeared proud and enthusiastic as he discussed his leadership and communication with the higher command, who were pleased with his leadership style. And in paragraph 32, he added, "The government of Sudan knew me well. I am a kind person. Although they thought I was stubborn and dangerous, I did whatever mission they assigned to me. All the Arab tribal leaders, local Arab tribal leaders, liked me." So it's no mystery how he ended up being selected to fight for the GOS in 2003 and 4. He had experience in the Army, in combat, leading operations against rebels. I'll turn now to Kadum and Bindisi and briefly go through the crimes committed in the 3 operations which the accused was convicted of. Start with early on the day of August 2003, during the attack, a convoy of CRF officials went through the villages, reassuring the population that the Janjaweed would not attack. This shows the premeditation of the attack and a particularly treacherous manner in which it was carried out, assuring the civilian population not to worry before attacking them. The attacking force under his command left Mukjar around 15 August 2003 and attacked Nyerli and Tiro on the way to Kadum. After that, they attacked Merli, Sadar, and Drangal before reaching Bindisi that evening. Now, throughout the attack, you found the accused was present on the ground and led the Yanyaweed, issuing orders and instructions for the commission of the crimes, such as Amsa Aksa, wipe out and sweep away, cut the straw, eat it raw. He knew from his position of authority that these expressions would be understood as orders to target the poor people and their property in the villages. He knew that these crimes would be committed in these types of operations, and he personally participated in and supervised the attack. His presence, his orders, his approval of the conduct of the attackers, including his failure to punish any of them for their own crimes, for their crimes, further highlights the gravity of his conduct. And during the attack, during these crimes, the accused belittled those who questioned or objected to the crimes being committed, but congratulated his fighters. That's at the trial judgment powers 398, 401 to 402, 436 to 441, Your Honors. And again, I said it before, but what does he do in the middle of the attack? He congratulates, applauds, and celebrates with his agids, his commanders, that they have taught the Fur a lesson they will never forget. And the next day he instructed his agids to continue the operation, move from this location, and destroy the remainder of the villages of Bindisi and Mukjar. That's para 439. So once again, houses are looted and burned, household items are taken, markets are pillaged, even a mosque was burned down. We'll talk a minute about forcible transfer. The inhabitants, most of these people were farmers, small-scale traders. They were left with no means to survive, no homes, no possessions except for what little they could run away with. And they were forced to flee, many being not able to return to their land. The displacement of these thousands of people, for which land ownership was central to their social and economic and cultural lives, central to their whole way of life, further aggravates the impact of these crimes. And that's at para 277 of the judgment, Your Honors. Murder. At least 46 minimum, particularly defenseless persons, men and women, elderly and young, were murdered in this operation. Killed as the attackers shot at them while they were running away, fleeing. P11's uncle was shot dead while fleeing the attack with her. So was P15's father. They see their relatives murdered. Others were murdered inside their homes. Some burned to death inside their homes. It's para 408 of the judgment. Some were killed whilst under the control of the attacking forces, not running away. P11 told you about how 20 men were captured with her, separated from the women, taken aside, hands tied behind their back, and then these 20 men are executed while they're under his control. Paras 424 and 429. Rape. Minimum 16 vulnerable, particularly vulnerable, women and girls, all ages, from older women to children, raped in, I won't spend too much time on it, but horrific, humiliating circumstances while under the control of the attackers. Some were stripped and raped in public, while others, including children, were menaced, forced to watch the rape, the violation. We have a slide now, which will be on evidence 2, I hope. Yes, thank you, Allison. This is what P15 said. When the women got raped, they were raped right in front of me. Some other women got raped in other places. Skip the question. All the rapes that happened right in front of us, and they even forced us to look at what they were doing. Even children were forced to look at what was happening. And that child whose mother was raped, and he was thrown, all that happened right in front of us. We saw it all. These victims, the survivors, obviously suffered long-lasting physical and psychological damage, but also social harm as a result of the stigma attached to rape in their culture, their society. Your Honors expressly acknowledge the impact of the rape on the victims, their children, and the community as a whole at powers 434 and 652 of your judgment. But I will remind us of the words of P11 when she testified. Women who were raped, they are living now, they are now disillusioned. I know some of them who committed suicide. They killed themselves. Some of them lost their minds due to this rape. They were living in isolation. They could not socialize with others. I'll detour now a little bit from the operations to talk about the specific harm to women and girls and children in general, which has been found in this case. For many of these people, essentially the survivors, there's a community which is missing the men. The men were detained, degraded, tortured, killed, wiped out, swept away. As P50, 850 said, in his family there were no males left. That was at transcript 44, page 66, line 18. Their absence had and continues to have an immense impact on the surviving community of women, especially when you look at the cultural context in Darfur. It's a patrilineal and patriarchal society. V005 explained to your honors how the women had to bear the burden now as sole providers and single parents while living in harsh conditions in IDP camps and while grappling with their own trauma from the crimes they endured and saw. Rape of at least 16 women and girls in Kidum and Bendisi, your honors found, and in the surrounding areas, women and girls were not just raped, they were chased, stripped, gagged, beaten, dragged, whipped, held down, and sometimes gang raped by the accused men. That's at 429 to 433, and 894 to 896 of the judgment. These women and children were violated, terrorized, humiliated, and their lives forever altered. And that harm continues not only because of the physical pain, the mental pain, but transgenerational harm. And I'm talking there about the children born from these rapes who suffer from continuing social exclusion and a lasting stigma. As P15 put it, these children were without value in society. It's at T93, transcript 93, page 18, lines 2 to 5. Children suffered particular harm, and there's nobody more vulnerable than children as a result of his crimes. Children are meant to enjoy and should enjoy specific rights and protections as children, and the accused is aware of that, as my friends have cited to the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, arguing that their clients' children should have the right to enjoy contact with their father. That's at para 52 of the defense submissions. So briefly, what are the main rights of the child as recognized in the convention, but that we all accept? Education. Many witnesses told this court how children were not able to continue their education, which was stopped and cut off during these attacks, and they've not been able to be adequately educated in the camps. Their right to education and to pursue an education was destroyed, and in many cases, they've not been able to recover that. Obviously, the right not to be subject to sexual exploitation and sexual abuse, Article 34 of that convention. yet you have found that he is responsible for the rape of children. The right not to be subject to torture or cruel, inhumane, or degrading treatment, or deprived of their liberty unlawfully. This trial chamber found that under the accused's command, children were forced to witness rapes, arrested and detained, beaten, whipped, kicked, stabbed, forced to lie face down in the hot sun for hours without food, water, or access to a toilet, humiliated, degraded, called names like slaves, threatened at gunpoint, and forced to witness the mistreatment and murder of their family members and community leaders. The right not to be unlawfully separated from one's parents. I don't need to go into that. They were separated from their fathers when they were murdered, and they were separated from their families during the attacks. The unlawful interference with the family or home, Article 16. These 4 children had the right not to be subjected to interference with their family or home. Well, their homes were burned to the ground, everything they had were stolen, and they were forced away from their land. Most importantly, the right to life. And you have found, in this case, that that right was taken away and they were murdered for some of the children. Come back to the operations now, briefly go through Mukjar. I'll start with one of the accused commands. This is at the, as the men are being taken from Mukjar police station to execution sites at Khor Talaba. He said, shoot again, shoot again. Sorry, this is at the execution site. At Khor Talaba, the accused is present. What does he order his men? Shoot again, shoot again. Maybe one of them did not get shot, so shoot again. You find that at paragraph 554 of your judgment. Those are the orders he gives. Not just shoot. Make sure there were no survivors. Make sure everyone is dead. Those victims were never seen alive again. There were only 2 survivors. During the course of the Mukjar and Delej operation, which I'll discuss briefly in a minute, he implemented the same formula. Arrest, separate, arrest, detain predominantly fur males, perceived as being associated with or sorting the rebels, then mistreat, torture, and murder them. Mostly men, but again, some boys. They were separated from their families, arrested at checkpoints, and during the course of house-to-house searches in Mukjar. Fur community leaders were targeted especially as part of the explicit policy of the GOS. When they arrived at checkpoints, these community leaders, they were immediately detained without question. Trial judgment 489. From the moment these men, boys, and community leaders entered the detention cells at the Mukjar police station, they were treated like animals, actually worse than animals. They'd been displaced. They were fleeing attacks on their villages, on other villages. They came to Mukjar looking for refuge. They were hungry, they were thirsty, they were tired, they were scared, they were vulnerable. Were they fed? Given medical care? Allowed to rest? No. Police station, Your Honors, heard countless, many descriptions of how awful it was in the Mukjar police station for the detainees. The cells were filthy, so overcrowded that detainees were put on top of each other. It was hard to breathe. It's incredibly hot. They're sweating. They have nowhere to urinate or defecate except in their cell. They're given very little food and water and no medical care whatsoever. And he personally and with his men abused the prisoners while they were already in those terrible conditions. Around 1st March, the accused arrives with his forces at the police station and begins to physically and verbally abuse the detainees. The accused called them slaves, magas, Tora Bora, and accused them of being rebels. Targeted, as he always did, the Fur community leaders for mistreatment especially, threatening to personally kill Zarruq. He hits him on the shoulder with his axe, breaking Zarruq's arm, and he hits other community leaders. He uses his axe, his signature axe, striking the detainees, breaking bones, cutting them open. And we have briefly, Your Honors, a slide of P990's cut from when the accused hit him with his axe at the Mukhtar police station. P919's skin was burned with an iron. P903 had hot plastic thrown on him. P919 witnessed detainees having their ears cut off, their heads shaved with knives until their scalps bled. It's paragraph 526 to 528. And at least 3 died in detention. These crimes, committed against helpless, defenseless detainees in their custody, lasted over 2 days. They constitute acts of particular cruelty. On or around the 2nd of March, several officials and officers met at the Mukhtar police station, including commander of the CRF, Lieutenant Colonel Al-Taib, and the accused. The accused told those present they needed to take the prisoners to Zilinji and that he was getting direct orders and instructions from Minister Haroon, and that he did not take instructions from a wali or a mutamid. Paragraph 539 of the trial judgment, again showing his position of authority and how important he is to this plan. And the accused said that he wanted all the displaced persons in Mukhtar dead. Trial judgment, paragraph 539. And when Lieutenant Colonel Al-Taib replied they should not kill those who came down from the mountains to surrender, the accused responded to him, "I can communicate directly with the minister. Who are you to tell me this? I would only waste one bullet to get rid of you." After this period of detention and torture, the detainees are taken out of their cells. The accused is present. He personally takes some out. These detainees were crying as they're pulled out of the cells. The accused hit several of them with his axe, including Zarruq and Haroon Noor. That's 544 and 545 of the judgment. And at least 52 detainees are loaded onto vehicles, packed so tightly they're forced to sit or lie on each other, taken to the execution sites. And as they're departing, the accused, again, celebrating this cruelty and these crimes, is heard shouting, "Allah Akbar, Tora Bora is over. Prepare their graves," which he did. It's paragraph 549 of the judgment. The Yanuid and the GOS forces continue, even during the transport, beating and insulting the detainees. One soldier told them, "If any of you know verses from the Quran, you better start praying, because these people are going to kill you." It's paragraph 553. The 167 men and boys killed in the course of Mukhtar and Dalej, which I'll come to, they stood no chance against the accused and the Yanuid and the GS forces. Their fate was sealed because of what they represented. The majority of the 4 males detained in Mukhtar and Dalej, they weren't even questioned as to their actual involvement or support for rebels. It was presumed, because they arrived fleeing from different attacks from different villages, from specific areas outside of Mukhtar and Delej. They were four, they were male, that was enough. Those intersecting grounds, political, ethnic, and gender, formed the basis for their targeting. Again, that was enough in the eyes of the accused to murder them. He called them his enemy, and he stated that murdering them was his, quote, work, term he actually used during the murder operation. It's at para 557 of the judgment. And who were these victims of the Mukhtar executions? Well, same as in Delej, which I'll discuss in a minute. Ordinary civilians fleeing attacks, literally being hunted down by the accused. Students, teachers, farmers, tradesmen, community leaders, they left behind families, entire families, and those families were broken and left even more vulnerable than they had been as the war continued. I'll go quickly now, Your Honors, through Delej. What happened in Delej for those victims from 5 to 7 of March 2004 for the survivors, it's forever imprinted on them. That pain, fear, and terrible loss is something inside of them that they will never lose. In those 3 days, the Janjaweed and the GOS forces, led by the accused, Abd-Al-Rahman, Ali Kashab, hunted down, tortured, degraded, and murdered more than 100 fur men and boys. Minimum three of the no fewer than 114 people they murdered were children, and others, as we know, are community leaders. I'll quote witness 994 briefly, Your Honors. He's talking about the first day of the Delej operation when they woke up and found their town, well, the refugees found their town surrounded. He said, "It was an intensely painful date. What I saw was atrocious. That is not acceptable. These are painful events that I will never forget. I must register this in my memory, and I will never forget it until Judgment Day." P994 at transcript 84, page 50. The accused's role? He had an essential role in the crimes in Delej. He agreed with his co-perpetrators to commit the crimes. He commanded the Janjaweed in this joint operation. He was present and participated in the preparation and the executions of the crimes personally. He gave orders, and he personally committed crimes. In March 2004, more than 16,000 people had crowded into Delej after fleeing attacks on their homes. Witness P955 was 15 when his village was attacked. He ran away to the mountains, carrying his younger brother on his back. For 8 days, he hid there, separated from his mother, with virtually nothing to eat, almost no water. His feet were bleeding from crossing long distances, and he sought refuge with family finally in Delej. It's P955, transcript 63, page 30. But the situation in Delej was dire. Local people tried to help, but there wasn't enough food or shelter for so many of them. On 5th of March, whatever refuge, safety these refugees had, the displaced had and found in Delej, was shattered. They woke up that morning to find that the town was surrounded by the Janjaweed and GOS forces, led by the accused, and they entered Delej. There was no escape from a frightening, violent, and abusive house-to-house search and arrest operation that followed. People tried to hide as the Janjaweed and GOS searched the streets and houses for 4 men and boys who were not from Delege. The Yanyuid denigrated these people, calling them slaves, donkeys, threatened them, beat them, kicked them, and herded them like animals to the police station. At the police station, outside the police station, at least 100 arrested men and boys forced to lie face down on the ground for hours in the hot sun without food or water. The accused, he was present. He controlled the Yanyuid at the police station. He patrolled around the detainees, again, denigrating them and glorying in his crimes, saying, "You escaped from Arawala and then you came here. Even if you fly to the sky, I will get you." Para 607 of the judgment. The Yanyuid had no mercy, stamped on the detainees, walked on them, beat them. One detainee stabbed in the eye with a bayonet. And the accused personally tortured and degraded these detainees. He personally took part, stepping on their backs and hitting them with a stick. Inside the police station, he murders a man named Yanif using his axe. He told Yanif, "I'm not going to spend one single shot on you because shots are expensive. We pay money for it. So all what I'm going to use is this axe." And he does. It's the trial judgment, Para 611. The second murder he commits in Delege is in public, Sheikh Motor of Massa village. In public, in front of people, an exceptionally cruel and frankly cowardly act. To murder this sheikh with his axe. When it's time to murder the detainees, he supervises the process. He instructs his men to load the detainees onto waiting Land Cruisers, and children as young as 13 or 14 are loaded onto those vehicles, taking them to their death. That's Paras 617 and 618. And during this process, the accused personally committed another, I want to highlight it, the exceptional cruelty. A man named Isa Haroon protested against his 13 or 14-year-old son being loaded onto a vehicle to be taken away from him. He said, "Don't take my son." The accused refused to release the boy. Isa Haroon told the accused, "I will go wherever you take my son." Abd-Al-Rahman, Ali Kushayb, told Isa Haroon to get on the truck, get on the vehicle. And both of them were murdered at the execution site, father and son. More than 100 detainees are transported to the locations outside Delege, where they're shot to death. Abd-Al-Rahman himself, present at the execution site, one of the execution sites to the northwest of Delege, where at least 70 to 80 detainees are murdered. After he gave the instruction, the Yanyuid killed them, shot them with Kalashnikovs and a machine gun. Only 2 men survived these killings. One man, Malenkwe, was terribly injured by the shooting, terribly injured, and died after he had managed to walk back to Delege. That's at Paras 631, Your Honors. The bodies left behind of the civilians were discovered later by surviving civilians, including by children. Some people found their own family members lying at these execution sites where they were discarded. P671 was only 17 years old, where he found his father and his brother who had been murdered by the accused. He stated, "I was really affected and impacted by the death of my older brother and my father, because my father was my leader in life. He was teaching me. He was educating me. He took me with him to farming, and he was my leader in life. And when I lost him on 5 March, I was extremely sad because I had lost a large part of myself. Transcript page 98. Transcript 98, page 85. I'll talk a little bit now about the community leaders who were murdered in Delitzsch. Killings didn't stop on the mass executions. They continued. 2 days later, on 7 March, as a group of community leaders was murdered. You found murdered. If we could have slide 5, please, Allison. One was the Umda of Furgo, Umda Ahmed Abdul-Shafa, known as Kindiri. You can see a photograph now with him pointed out. It's hard to see here, but he's smiling, Judge, because this was a happy occasion. It's a ceremony in 1995, before their life has been destroyed. And in 1995, this ceremony, they're announcing the school results. This man, Kindiri, Umda Kindiri, had a large family when he was murdered in Delitzsch by the accused. Some were present 2 days before when he'd been arrested during the searches. And they cried as he was dragged from their house, from the house they were staying in. When they started crying, the accused threatened to shoot them. It's at paragraphs 602 and 908 of your judgment. One family member, witness P955, described seeing Umda Kindiri on the back of the vehicle with his hands tied the last time he saw him alive. 955 said, "He looked over in my direction and made eye contact with me. On seeing me, he became emotional, and we both started crying." That's star OTP 0220 0620 at 630, 0630, paragraph 41. His family, over 20 years since his murder, they're yet to be able to find his body, his grave, or be able to hold a proper ceremony for him. What you see on the screen now, Your Honors, 2 other Umdas that were murdered in Delitzsch. Umda Muhammad Suleiman Abdul-Shafa, known as Durbo, the Umda of Tanako, and Sheikh Ismail Abdulaziz, also known as Dakobi, from Garcilla. Murdered for no reason in Delitzsch. Now, the targeting and killing of community leaders had a special impact and lasting impact, not just on their families, but on the communities in which they served, because they were important to their communities. You found this in the judgment at para 656. I'll actually read it out. The execution of the sheikhs and umdas, in particular, had a significant impact on the 4 communities in Mukjar and Delitzsch, given their symbolic and substantive role and importance. These leaders offered guidance, resolved disputes, and maintained communal cohesion. This loss left many in the 4 community without the leaders on whom they were dependent in their daily life. And of course, that's why they were killed, to help destroy the community. In conclusion, Kaduman Bindisi, Mukjar, Delitzsch, the crimes that he was convicted for featured extreme violence, extreme cruelty against multiple, especially vulnerable victims. And that harm has not and probably cannot be repaired to this day. I'm coming to the end, Your Honors. Before I close, let me briefly address what the defense suggests is an appropriate sentence for the crimes I've just run through. Now, the defense recognized that a sentence should acknowledge the harm caused to victims. That's at paragraph 7 of their submissions. According to the defense, the sentence that would be proportionate to their client's culpability, paragraph 3, is for the chamber to order the immediate release of Mr. Abd-Al-Rahman with a possible fine. Although, of course, they say he doesn't have any money. That's page 46. So 27 counts of war crimes, crimes against humanity, murder, rape, persecution, torture, the list goes on. Proportionate sentence that would acknowledge the harm to the victims, so say the defense, is immediate release. He's been in custody 5 years. And it goes without saying that such a plainly unjust sentence would have the exact opposite of promoting deterrence, which is sorely needed now. Your Honors, the only appropriate sentence is a joint sentence of life imprisonment. We rely on our submissions for this, but let me just make a couple points. The gravity of the crimes are extremely high. 213 murders, much higher than the previous unfortunate records at this court. Only a life sentence will serve the interest of retribution and deterrence. The aggravating factors, again, referred to and rest on our submissions at paragraphs 141 to 144. But I think what you can see and what we can all see is shown by what I've gone through today, which is just part of the evidence of how terrible these crimes were at his hands. The crimes he has been convicted for, all of them, involved particularly defenseless victims. All of them involved the commission of crimes with particular cruelty and multiple victims. And all of them were committed with a discriminatory motive. All these points from Rule 145 are met. Turning to mitigation, mitigating circumstances, genuinely mitigating circumstances, there aren't any. There's no remorse. The whole defense that he was not Ali Kushayb was a lie. It was a positive defense, putting to witnesses, victims and witnesses, not only that he was not Ali Kushayb, but the proposition that Ali Kushayb, on occasion, did not exist. The surrender, after 13 years on the run, and only to avoid prison and possibly crucifixion, execution, or mutilation in Sudan, should not be given any weight. That's at our submissions 146 to 148. In Uganda, no weight given, no genuine weight, no significant weight given to his surrender after 5 years. The accused waited 13. Personal circumstances, his age, his family situation, his lack of prior convictions, those should be given no mitigating weight. That's our submissions 150 to 153. His age, well, he would have been, I guess, in his mid-60s if he hadn't run for 13 years. And his family situation, being away from his family, being away from his home. That's what happens when you commit war crimes and crimes against humanity and you're convicted. You serve your sentence away from your family. So that's what happens to everybody who's convicted of a crime and gets a prison sentence. The supposed good conduct, I'll call it that, after 2003 and 4, this is the mediator man of peace role, I guess, continued afterwards in Riyadh al-Berdi. That, Your Honors, should be given no weight. We contest it. D40, D41 aren't credible. We wanted them to come here so we could cross-examine them. And I don't say this in a bragging way, but I expect that if D40 and 41 had appeared here, they would have been significantly damaged on cross-examination as the other witnesses from that town were. So, Your Honors, I'm going to finish here. We respectfully request, Your Honors, impose the only fair sentence, the only just sentence, a joint sentence of life imprisonment. Thank you.
Mr. Nichols, we have a few questions about some of the submissions you made in your written sentencing submissions. First of all, can you turn to paragraph 9? It's your written submissions, yeah. You state, when dealing with the joint sentence, that in particular, the lack of factual overlap between the three operations, the appropriate sentence, as you've already mentioned in your submission, is life imprisonment. I'm not clear what you're saying there. Are you saying there's absolutely no factual overlap? There's entirely separate, self-contained incidents, or a series of incidents?
Yes, I think so, Your Honor. I mean, they are distinct, three distinct operations. They're similar. There's overlap in the method and the forces used, but we have presented them as three distinct operations that took place at different times in different places. So August 2003, and then...
but the evidence that you called shows the Lej literally is a continuation of Mukhtar, doesn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is a continuation of the same course of conduct. It takes place a few days later, but all these victims are separate and distinct as well.
But I just want to understand what what the prosecution's submitting. Are you submitting that he should get a higher sentence on the basis that these are three entirely separate and not overlapping incidents?
Yes, Your Honors, and they continue one after the other after the other. So in other words, he continues this course of conduct. He commits the crimes in Kadum and Bindisi. He then commits the crimes with his forces in Mukhtar, and then, yes, it follows closely on the tails, but Delej as well.
All right. The second matter is this. If you turn, this deals with the rapes. Paragraph 32. Well, sorry, not the rapes. It's really all the crimes. His degree of participation and intent. You say that at the last sentence, his conspicuous presence and approval before, during, and after the attack, and the overall permissive environment which he created for an operation, including his failure to challenge or punish any members of the Janjaweed under his command for the crimes that they committed. But you didn't charge command responsibility in this case.
That's correct, Your Honor.
Right, so what were you intending to suggest by that sentence?
I think we're intending to suggest, Your Honors, that in addition to the modes we have charged, ordering co-perpetration, that this behavior is illustrative of the critical role he plays and his intent. He is I think the key part is conspicuous and present and approval. So he is making sure that his troops are carrying out the orders and the crimes that they are meant to as part of these different operations. But I take your point. He's not charged with Article 28.
Yeah. All right, and the final matter is this, and it deals with your suggestions which you've repeated today, in fact, but it's probably easier if you look at your brief. Dealing with effectively torture and outrages upon personal dignity. And you said, as you said today, paragraph 92, that the detainees were subjected to acts of particular cruelty, and then over the page you go on to the severity of the abuse, but effectively, how are we supposed to take that into account, given the principles that a legal element of the offence can't be considered an aggravating factor?
Well, I think that's right for torture, Your Honor, but it is under 145 2B4, the commission of crimes with particular cruelty, or where there were multiple victims, which applies in both circumstances.
Well, yes, but torture in itself, that's what torture is. Particular cruelty, isn't it, Mr.?
Yes, well, obviously you can't double count, and I understand that, and we're certainly not asking you to.
And the final is this. You do, at paragraph 99, describe the long-lasting physical, and you've shown us the photographs and described what happened to these people. But you also referred to psychological harm, but you don't actually mention, nor have you mentioned today, what psychological harm in particular are you referring to?
Your Honors, I think from some of the quotes of the rape victims, I don't have them in front of me that I read out today, they talk about the suffering.
No,
it's more the submissions that as well that the legal representative for victims have put forward. The victims talking about how much they miss their father, how they will never forget the day of this attack or that crime that they still suffer from. And I don't have it just in front of me, but the victims have testified how they were unable to complete their education, and that has impacted them psychologically as a result of these crimes. And of course, the harsh life in the camps and being displaced for over 20 years and the harm that causes every day.
Yes, all right. It's just that you specifically didn't mention all right. Well, I think what we'll do is, let's see, I've got the order right. The next submissions come from the representatives of the victims, right? Yes, thank you. So we're in the normal order. All right. Yes, Mr.
Madam President, just for the purpose of the day organization. So we will have the submissions from the legal representative of victims, and then we start. We have requested for our submissions, the first round of submissions, 2 sessions, which means that how do you want to, I don't know how long my colleague will take, and I'm certainly not suggesting that she should speed it up, not at all, but my question is, would you like to carry on later today, or we finish tomorrow before the 16th?
Well, I would have thought, I must say, your submissions in particular cover a very wide-ranging area. And I was actually wondering this morning whether we were going to complete, firstly, all your submissions today. D16, I'm not clear about, but if necessary, we can sit Wednesday morning. So I think we'll see as how far we get. Miss von Wissinghausen was going to say how long she can take. I think roughly.
I think we will need about an hour. Our intention today is actually to respond to the defense submissions and more general submissions or conclusions, including more views and concerns from our clients, we're saving for the end of the sentencing hearing.
Yeah, well, and that, yes, I know we said that there is a second round. I'm told, I can't think why there should be, there is a day's gap normally, but is everybody happy to go on Wednesday morning? And then
Yes, of course.
straight on without
We
a
are.
gap? Yeah.
Absolutely, no
Right.
problem. We are prepared for that.
All right. Okay, well then we'll say, if necessary.
Thank you,
we'll
Madam
sit
President.
We'll sit Wednesday morning. Yeah. Yes, all right, we're adjourned now until 11:30. Thank you.
All rise, we have 11.